So welcome everyone to this video for what is embodied self-defense, because that's a question I'm getting quite a lot when I'm mentioning that. And in very short, it is working on preventing or solving conflicts, mainly physical conflicts, through the principles of embodiment. And I know that definition doesn't tell you a lot if you don't know what embodiment or embodiment principles is. So the base of embodiment is, and that's I'm having this from a lot of mentors, just to name a few: Miles Kessler, Mark Walsh, Paul Linden, Rachel Blackman, Alexandra Vilvoskaya, much more people. But what I learned from them is embodiment is really awareness and choice. That's the main principles. So awareness, knowing how you are, knowing what's happening in your body, and choice, being able to change this if you want to. So knowing how you want to be and having the tools to actually change this and changing the embodiment into the direction you want. And embodied self-defense is really focusing mainly on preventing an attack from happening. So if you imagine there's a physical assault happening, there's a whole time of interaction which happens before, which you might be conscious or not of. But in this kind of realm, you can actually influence the conflict before it's happening. And this is where I'm using embodiment principles for. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about victim blaming. I'm certainly not talking about like, oh yeah, if I'm getting attacked, it's my own fault because I dressed wrong, I behaved wrong, I moved wrong. No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. But it is important to notice that we are social beings. And as social beings, we are in dynamic relationships all the time. That means we're not just regulating and influencing ourselves, but we are regulating and influencing others in our environment. And we're doing this usually in a very unconscious way. So people picking up like me little signals from how I am, and will react on this. And because we are like evolutionary built to live in tribes, live in relationships, live in social interactions, we are highly tuned into this without even knowing. And making this aware, making this conscious, and being able to influence this is where embodied self-defense really goes into. And the cherry on top is this is not just something which helps you in conflict situation. It will help you and change the way how you approach relationships as a whole. So what am I doing in embodied self-defense? So one thing I noticed, a huge problem is from my background, mainly as a police officer, as a martial artist, teaching Aikido in Israel and the West Bank, mainly to young women there. There is a problem with the way classical self-defense courses work. So what I'm seeing a lot, and please don't be offended if you're teaching self-defense, because I don't know how you exactly are doing it, but I see it happen a lot, that there's being techniques being taught in a weekend, in a 6-week course or so. There are certain techniques. Some favorites is poking the eyes, kicking the balls. We all know this. Like I learned it as a young girl. Yeah, if someone attacks you, you need to kick him between the legs. And there is a huge problem with that. They don't work. I'm really sorry to break it to you, but an attack is so contextual that the likelihood that such a technique is working is really small. It's dependent from a lot of contextual factors. One of them being an attack or being in a physical assault situation is a highly stressful situation. And it's even for experienced people, for experienced martial artists, it's a highly stressful situation. And if you don't have the skills to regulate yourself in the stress situation in order to make smart choices, the only thing which is left to you is your default mode. We are reacting instinctually. We are full of adrenaline. We are not thinking anymore. We're reacting automatically, instinctually, The prefrontal cortex is not even engaged. The reaction literally stops in the limbic system, and then we're just like going into fight, flight, freeze, whatever our default mode is. That's individually very different. And even if we're coming to the point where we might be, oh yeah, fight and kicking balls, then there is still a lot of contextual factors. Like even kicking someone between the legs is not so easy to actually hit the right spot. So what often happens is that someone tries this, doesn't really hit the right spot because he or she is stressed or and nervous and all over the place. And also the attacker is full of adrenaline, and adrenaline is also something which reduces the pain tolerance. So trying to make a technique which I'm not absolutely sure will work actually can make the situation worse. And I saw this happening. So in the worst case, what can happen? You try a technique, it doesn't work, and the person, because they don't feel the pain in this moment, gets really angry, and then you really have a problem, then you really have an issue. So doing techniques or learning techniques in a short amount of time doesn't work. If you really want to learn techniques, go to a martial art, really study it, invest the time, invest into the repetition so it becomes your default mode. But until then, you can do other things in the time before. So, for example, you can work on your regulation skills in a highly stressful situation. And this is something I'm doing a lot in Embodied Self Defense. Working with simulators in a safe environment where someone can learn to regulate. And there are really specific techniques, different ways of centering, who help you to deal with the stress and making smarter choices. I'm also working with environmental factors, with what can you actually do, what do you have like available, like your voice, like looking into what can you use as a weapon. So we're looking also into that, but we're also looking into our embodiment. So how is it to walk, for example, with certain emotions? I'm seeing a lot of like young girls running around, like looking at their phone, and if you take out the phone and just leave the embodiment, what does it remind you of? Is this very close to an embodiment of being anxious, of being scared? And it also takes the attention from the environment into whatever someone is doing on the smartphone. So we're working with that. And it's, again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's more about being aware what I'm doing and having a choice. Do I want to continue doing this in this specific context? And this is what I'm working with in Embodied Self Defense. So there's much, much more. This is just like giving you a little bit of some gems I like to approach. Of course, I can also teach you techniques. I have a wide background in Aikido, in police work. I worked 10 years in the police forces, like all the defense techniques, which are also coming from different martial arts. I'm doing a lot of kickboxing these days. So there is plenty of stuff on techniques I can teach you. If you want this. But the thing is with techniques, you need to have the repetitions under the belt, and that's thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions in order to make it your default, in order to be able to act on them in a default situation. And there are easier ways, the principle-based ways, where you can actually prevent an attack from happening in most of the cases, and acting smart when it happens. So this is where Embodied Self-Defense looks at. If you're interested, I'm offering workshops as well as courses, and you can book me for just a one-way workshop. We will look into what is the most useful for you. You can also book me for courses of different length, like weekly courses and so on. Some of this stuff we can also do online, not everything, but definitely on regulation and embodiment we can work online as well as a way of embodied self-defense. Happy to do that. Give me a call, book a call. We can have an orientation talk to see if that's what you want to get out, is a good fit from my skill set, and if we are a good fit as client and coach. and I'm happy to be in contact with you. So hope to see you around. Stay safe and looking forward to hear back from you. Thank you very much.